Chapter 11. I'd looked for flights home while we waited for Alexis the day before and discovered there was nothing we could make after shifting Alice, so we'd stayed in the hotel for another night. We got up early to check out and make the drive back to Midland in time to catch our plane. I'd already showered and I was gathering the last of our things and packing them while Devon showered when Troy came through the open adjoining door. "I'm ready whenever the two of you are." He glanced around the small room. "I'm almost ready here. Devon's still in the shower, but once he's finished, we can go." I put the last of my things in my suitcase. "Good, then I have time to do this." I never sensed it coming, as he slipped up behind me and wrapped his arms around me, pinning my arms to my sides and covering my mouth with some kind of cloth wet with a sweetish, chemical-smelling liquid. A wave of fear flashed through my mind and turned my body cold before the world went black. I came to slowly. Confused. I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't place what. I tried to open my eyes, but they were too heavy. Fear washed through me again, I could barely think. "Nicki." I heard Devon's voice as a careful hand cupped my face, and I turned into it, trying again to open my eyes. It was a struggle, but this time they lifted. Devon looked down at me, his face full of concern. "Are you okay?" I struggled for a moment, trying to take a mental inventory. "My head hurts, but otherwise I think I'm fine." "What happened?" "Troy tried to kidnap you. I felt your fear and then nothing. I made it in here in time to stop him from taking you, but I was more concerned with you than stopping him, and he got away." I let my eyes drop and noticed he was naked and dripping water. I couldn't have been unconscious long. I tried to sit up, but a wave of dizziness made me lie back down and close my eyes. "Are you sure you're all right?" "I think so. Moving made me dizzy." "Close your eyes." I did and felt his arm slide under me. The world shifted as he lifted me and carried me the short distance to the bed. "How's that?" He sounded worried. I opened my eyes and waited for the dizziness to return. "Good," I said when the world stayed where it should be. "I wish Alexis hadn't left last night. I'd really like to have you looked at before we go." "I'm fine, just give me a minute and we can get out of here." "No. I don't know what he used to knock you out and how it might affect you and the baby. I want you checked out before we go anywhere." I sighed, realizing that we weren't going to make our flight. "Call Pierce, the number's in my PCD. Tell him what happened and ask him if we can borrow their healer." I rolled onto my side and curled up, closing my eyes while I listened to Devon move around the room. "Where's your PCD?" he asked after a moment. "Top of my purse on the table." I didn't open my eyes. I didn't pay any attention as he called the local pack leader and asked for help. Instead, I considered why Troy would do this. Why would someone who was supposed to be protecting me try to hurt me? My head ached from whatever he'd used to knock me out, but I ignored it. The only reason I could think of for Troy to try to kidnap me was Brandon. Could Troy be a part of the same elitist group as Brandon? If he was one hell of an actor not to let on in the last 4 days, but then I'd known Brandon for more than 20 years, and I still had no clue how he'd really felt about humans and non-shifters. The ache in my head throbbed into a near-blinding pain, and I realized I had to stop trying to think. I knew Devon would keep me safe if Troy came back, though I didn't think there was much chance of that. I emptied my mind, blocking out the sounds in the room around me, going through the steps I'd learned when Karen, our electo, had taught me to shield. The same focus that let me build metaphysical shields around myself would help me to deal with the pain. It let me to stop fighting it and let it flow over me, which would in turn help it to dull some. I don't know how much time passed before the bed shifting under me, and the weight of a hand on my arm pulled my awareness back to the hotel room. The throbbing in my head had faded to a dull ache. "Pierce will be here with help in a few minutes. How are you doing?" Devon kept his voice soft, but I could hear his concern. My head was bad for a while, but it's better now. It stopped hurting? No, but it's not so bad anymore. I looked at the door to Troy's room, still standing open. Did he leave anything behind? Devon followed my gaze. I don't know. I'll go see. He disappeared through the open door and appeared a few seconds later carrying the small duffel that Troy had used as luggage. Apparently, he was in too much of a hurry to take his bag with him. Devon gave me an innocent look and dropped the bag in one of the chairs sitting next to the table. Looks like. I smiled, finding his pretend amazement amusing. Are you sure there? A knock on our door interrupted him. He checked the peephole. It's Pierce. He scented the air to make sure they weren't hiding anyone where he couldn't see. There are 3 of them. He looked at me once more before opening the door. The Aniquitos was the first through the door, with the Electo right behind, and their enforcer, Gordon, bringing up the rear. I tried to sit up and greet the local leader. No. Pierce held one hand in my direction. Stay where you are. Let Vanna take a look at you. I relaxed against the pillow and waited while the Electo came closer. She bent to one knee next to the bedside table in order to get closer to eye level with me. How you feeling? She asked, the Texas twang thick in her voice. All right. My head aches, but that's it. Can you tell me just what happened? I lay on the bed, my attention focused on her. I was finishing packing while Devon showered when Troy came in. I told him we were almost ready. I was just waiting for Devon. He said, good, then I have time to do this, and he came up behind me and grabbed me, pinning my arms to my sides as he put something over my face. There was a sweet kind of chemical smell, then nothing. The next thing I knew, I was waking up on the floor with Devon kneeling over me. Any idea of what he used to knock you out? No, none. I've never smelled anything like it. Gordon put one hand between us, a folded rag between his fingers. This was on the floor behind the door. Vanna took the rag and lightly sniffed it, trying to smell what was on it without falling victim to its effect. She made a face and held it in my direction. Is this the scent? I sniffed, not getting too close. The familiar scent made the pain in my head flare. I winced. That's it. She turned and looked at her mate, chloroform. She looked back at me. I understand you're expecting? I nodded and she continued, chloroform was once commonly used as an anesthetic, then ether was discovered to be safer and it fell out of fashion. Anyway, it can leave you dizzy and tired and give you one hell of a headache, but it will pass in a few hours. There shouldn't be any lasting effects for you or the little one, but I can check you out if it will make you feel better. I glanced at Devon, wondering what he would want. Please, his voice whispered through my mind. I looked back to the woman in front of me. I'd appreciate it. No problem. She gave me a small smile. The expression softened her face some and made her seem less severe. While I watched, her eyes glazed and I knew she was using her talent to look inside my body. I watched as her eyes flickered and scanned the length of my body, pausing for a moment over my lower abdomen. The pain in my head faded again. It wasn't gone, but it eased until it was barely a nuisance. I blinked at the difference and the healer's eyes cleared. A smile split her face. Everything's fine. I did what I could to help your head while I was at it. She watched me closely. It's much better, thank you. I pushed myself upright slowly in case the dizziness returned. The Electo braced herself on the bedside table and stood, stepping back so I could swing my legs over the edge of the bed. How you feeling now? She asked. I looked up. Much better, the dizziness is gone. She gave a single nod. Good. I looked around at the faces all focused on me. The Aniquitos watched patiently, while his enforcer was interested but distant. Devon looked worried. I'm fine, I promise, I sent to him. What now? I asked aloud. Now I get to ask a few questions, Pierce said. I waited, silent, for him to continue. You said the other man came in. How? That door there. I pointed to the now closed door between the rooms. He was here to protect me. We pushed the door touching sometimes, like at bedtime, but never completely closed. That would have defeated the purpose. The pack leader nodded. Naturally, you trusted him. Can I ask why you trusted him? I shrugged. Because Bill sent him. I trust Bill, and I assumed that anyone he sent to guard me would be worthy of trust too. Pierce nodded. Any signs he didn't have your backs? I was quiet, thinking back over the last few days, trying to think of anything Troy had said or done that didn't fit. I can't think of anything, but I only met him when we picked him up on our way out of town. I can't think of anything either, Devon said. I knew him in school, but not since. I know he isn't the same person he was then, but who is ever the same person they were in high school after 5 or 10 years? I see what you're saying. The Aniquitos looked at me again. Got any idea why he would try to take you? I took a deep breath and let it out slowly, not wanting to have to go into it, but knowing I had to. Do you remember the banished pack member I mentioned the first day? He was banished because he insisted I was his mate. I didn't agree, and he wouldn't take no for an answer. I looked away. We also discovered that he was part of a nasty little group. Well, we hope it's a little group. Anyway, they're supremacists. They believe that shifters are better than normal humans, and from what we've seen, non-shifting kitsune are lower on their totem pole than humans. The older man nodded. We had some of those try to set up shop here. They didn't fare too well. They wouldn't have where we are if our Aniquitos had been aware of them. Devon added. Anyway, I started again. Brandon wouldn't leave me alone. Devon and I were both being harassed, and finally Bill had had enough. He banished Brandon. A few weeks later, Devon and I went to Seattle on pack business. While we were there, Brandon hired a group of humans to kidnap me. I didn't know what was going on. I fought back and I broke free, killing one of the kidnappers in the process. The local pack had a detective on the police force that helped us track it from that end. With what the Seattle police were able to find out and some investigation on our side, we determined that Brandon was behind it. As close as we can figure, he's trying to kidnap and force me to become his mate. But that's not possible, you're already mated, Vanna said. We only sealed our mating last week, I admitted. A surprised look flashed across Vanna's face, but she remained silent. Does this Brandon know you're mated now? I hadn't given it much thought. I looked up at her. Someone in our pack's been feeding him information. I guess now we have a good idea who, but we haven't advertised that we're mated now, so it's possible he doesn't know. If Troy's our leak, we have to assume he knows now, Devon said. Pierce nodded. What else do you know about this Troy fellow? At a loss, I shook my head. Not much. He said he'd been on the enforcer team about a year. Oh, he's from the valley, so his family is still there. Actually, Devon spoke up, his parents were killed in a car accident our senior year. After that, he lived with his grandfather. He told me on the trip over here that his granddad passed away a few years ago. He has no family left. So he has no ties to the area, no reason to go back? The local leader asked. No, not that I'm aware of, Devon said. The older man took a deep breath and let it out. Well, you've got a choice to make. You're welcome to hang around here and look for him if you want to. However, if you'd rather go home, I'll launch a search and let you know what we find. If I were him, I'd be long gone. I don't think we'll find more than a trail of where he's been. Pierce looked back and forth between Devon and me. Let me talk to Nicki about it, see what she wants to do, Devon said. I'll let you know. The Aniquitos nodded. I stood, careful in case of dizziness. Thank you for coming. I shook the Aniquito's hand, then turned to the Electo and shook her hand. Thank you for making sure everything is okay with me and for helping with my head. It's all part of the job, she said. Let us know if you need anything else. The Aniquitos turned to the door. I'm sure we'll be in touch. Devon let them out and turned to me. Well, what do you want to do? I want to go home. I didn't even need to think about it. But I'm sure we're too late to make our flight now. Let me see if I can get us seats on another flight. I sat at the table with my PCD and started trying to figure out what we could do. Before noon, I had gotten us seats on an afternoon flight, and we headed back to Midland to catch it.